Welcome to Decoding Growth, where unfiltered conversations and bold ideas are reshaping retirement. Each episode cuts through the noise to reveal the strategies and unexpected alliances driving real industry change, one conversation at a time. Here are your hosts, Lisa Kotler and Will Prest.
Welcome back to Decoding Growth, the show where we unpack the ideas, partnerships, and playbooks moving workplace retirement forward. Today, we're diving into the big themes shaping the next few years: retirement to wealth convergence, the small business and state plan engine, advisor adoption, and how to handle the build, buy, partner question that enterprises face on a daily basis. I'm Will Prest, and I'd like to welcome my co-host, Lisa Kotler.
Thank you, Will. Excited to have another episode. And let me tell you, our guest has had a front seat to all of it. From modern record keeping, advisor platforms, PE-backed growth, she really knows how initiatives scale and maybe why others stall. And she's, as I said, has really seen it all. It'll take a minute to get through her bio because she's done it all too. So Lori Hardwick is a veteran operator, board director, really at the center of wealth tech and also retire tech. She serves on the boards of Swell, Orion, Cerity Partners, and then she previously chaired DocuPace. And then before all this board work, many of you know her, she was a group president of advisor services at InvestNet, which is when I first knew of Lori. At the time, I was at NFP, and our broker-dealer worked very closely and partnered with InvestNet. and then after that, she was COO at Pershing, which I remember was so awesome because the two top leaders at Pershing, a very large financial services firm, had two women running the show, which was really, really cool. She also founded or co-founded AI Labs, which really unifies advisor tech workflows. And again, across her operating roles, her board seat, she's really the through line for her is really about practical growth. You know, how do you make advisors more productive, help employers and their employees, and really turn platform convergence, retirement, wealth, operations, and all of that into measurable outcomes. See, I told you it was a lot.
Well, welcome, Lori. It's great to have you on Decoding Growth.
Thank you. I'm really excited for our conversation today, you guys.
What's been really fun for me is the different sorts of events that I've seen you at. I've seen you at Gen AI conferences. I've seen you at innovation conferences that are connecting tech and distribution. And I kind of want to start with, what problem in our industry still feels personal to you? What's something that really just keeps coming back to you when you sort of across these different board seats that you're on?
Yeah, well, honestly, it is very core to our conversation today. Well, as we look across the landscape and we look at the real gap in American savings today, and the people who are able to save for retirement and those who are not. And, our industry has not made it easy for people who don't have access to really save for their retirement. And it's a really big problem. There's so many, more than half of the Americans do not have a real retirement savings plan that they can fall back on to allow them 100% of what they are living off of when at the year they retire. So it's a massive problem across the board. And, as you mentioned, I'm on the board of Veswell. Veswell's mission really is to close the savings gap in America. And, I think we'll dig into a lot of that today as to what that means and how small businesses across, all of US can really start to allow their employees, whether they're waitresses or vet techs or, any part of the American industry, to start saving for themselves. Happens to be one of the few bipartisan positions out there that really both sides can see that, there's a real potential issue with Social Security taking us to the next decade, into the next decades, and allowing for people to be able to retire with confidence. So again, I think generally this is the one area that we all need to really as stewards to our clients and to the generations behind us to really try to fix this.
So well put, and couldn't agree with you more as someone who's really focused on coverage over the years and providing access to more people. We've done a great job for those we have given access to, but we certainly need. I mean, 1 out of 10 eligible employers actually offers a 401k plan. So couldn't agree with you more on that. One of the great ways that we could potentially get there is if we have what everyone loves to talk about, at least on our side of the house, and by that I mean the retirement plan industry, is this convergence, the bridge to wealth, if we can bring those two worlds together. And my question for you is one of the biggest questions I've had myself. From your vantage point, how seriously or how important is it to the wealth management world about converging with retirement plans? Because here's the thing. I'll tell you about my direct experience. I've been out trying to sell 401k plans to wealth management advisors. And while there are some that certainly want to do it and do, the majority don't. And I get it. I mean, there's a lot more risk. There's a lot for them to learn. There's more regulatory bodies over them because now, in addition to FINRA and SEC, you add DOL and IRS, and the margins are lower. So, yeah, more work, more risk, less money. So I get why they wouldn't want to do it necessarily. But we talk about it all the time. In fact, I was at a conference last week. Every conference I go to, this is one of the main topics, the bridge to wealth and how we're going to bring all this together. So I want to know, are the wealth management folks talking about it like we do at all of their conferences? Like, how are they thinking about it? And what can we learn from that?
So yeah, it's kind of like the inquiring minds want to know what is going on over there. Yeah, well, it's a real it's a tricky question to answer, to be honest, because there's two sides to every story, as as we all know. Most advisors that are advising small and mid-sized businesses do that as their job. They consider themselves business consultants, and they broker a good 401k for them, and HR benefits and all of those things. And it's really been very divided, as you said, from wealth management, and separate conversations. What I see from my lens, and again, I'm on the board of Cerity Partners, on the board of Cetera, and also of Swell, and I've had 35 years, probably longer. I never say longer, but it is longer. Of working in our industry. I've seen that you're right, Lisa. Most wealth management advisors really stick to wealth management and financial planning, and maybe a little bit of insurance, maybe a little bit of tax, but not really on the retirement solutions. And the big sticking point, there's a couple of them. One is, and I know everybody loves to say advisors are lazy, they don't want to do it. And Will and I talked about this before. It's not that they're lazy. I do not think advisors are lazy. In fact, I think there are very few lazy advisors out there, or they would not be doing what they're doing, because it's a million different things at once. But I do think it's a lack of confidence for how to get into this part of the business and do it well. I think that, they're fiduciary to their clients, and they want to make sure that they do it. They have the right tools, the right staff, the right education to do it well. And, retirement solutions is tricky. There's record keepers, there's payroll providers, there's all kinds of little integrations, that need to be done. And if it's your first or second one, or you just don't really know the story of how to do it, it becomes daunting. You've got a million other things you're doing as a wealth manager. So I think there's that thing, and we can dig into that, and what tools are out there now to make it easier. But the other part of it is that advisors have a hard time thinking about, I think when they start to think about, okay, I'm going to do this 401k for one of my small business owners and implement it. Now I have their 25, kids in a lot of cases, calling me for advice. This is not a good use of my time. It's a small, for those types of clients, they are much smaller accounts typically. They don't have a large amount of wealth, and it is a drag on their time. So, and all advisors have is their time. That's what they're paid for, to be able to really prioritize their days. So I think that there's a twofold situation. So one of the things that I've seen work well, and this was just recently put in place at Cetera, is a program where advisors can identify small to mid-sized business owners that they're already working with, and bring those into a group of specialists and experts at Cetera that can then take it from that point on. They have the tools, the resources, the education, even for the end participants and that business owner to really put that into effect, so that, and then the revenues are shared. So they bring them the client, and then the hope is that once those employees do have a certain amount of wealth, that the advisor is, brought back into the conversation to say, look, now at this point you have whatever, $250,000, $500,000, $1 million. We would like to do a full financial plan and really take you into the next stage of wealth management. And that is, like I said, a new program. Mike Durbin came from Fidelity. He knows all about retirement programs, and he really sees that untapped potential for growth in at Cetera as a broker dealer, and also for just general wealth management firms.
So that seems like a great example about how Cetera's really thought through it. They see the business case for it, and then they're putting kind of pre-built systems in place that fit for their advisors on their platform with a referral arrangement. So that's all about the business model, right? Ultimately.
That's right. And I know, Will, there'll be a lot of your audience is probably like, well, that's great for Cetera, but we do not have 10,000 plus advisors and that level of ability to staff and do all the, piping and all of that. So for those people, I would say my other firm that I'm affiliated with, which is Swell, they do have a turnkey asset management, turnkey retirement management platform that allows for, and it also has asset management options up underneath there if you just want to put people in a model. But they use chatbots to get you up and running. They also have people, obviously, to get you up and running, but it makes it super simple for advisors who do want to kind of tap into this from a really turnkey, digital forward, affordable way to really start to implement this. So for RIAs and other smaller type businesses that just say, you know what, I do see the potential here. And I think the other part of this potential that really gets missed in the overall architect of, how advisors are thinking about it, is what's missed is that when you can go to your client who's already a wealth management client and say, let me help you build something that's great for your employees, which, oh, by the way, builds more value in their business for when they want to sell, and will likely come back to the advisor, because anyone with a 401k plan typically holds clients or employees longer, has less cost for turnover, less cost for training. It has just more of a foundation for their business stability, which obviously extrapolates into value. So, that's the one thing that is kind of like a missed understanding of being able to do this as a trusted advisor to your client, to be able to bridge both business and personal.
What I like about that is what we see when we help large enterprises is there's a great idea in the home office, but it has to connect to the actual practices and the business case of whoever is actually in the field with the clients. So I like that. It's sort of, you talked about a checklist, and you talked about sort of how to remove friction. Cetera is a good example of how they did it, but then really just connecting to the business model. Like, why is it great for the advisor? And why is it, obviously it's great for the advisor because it's great for their clients.
Right, right, right. And I do believe most advisors out there, really, the majority, are very interested in doing what's right for their client every single day. 100%. Yeah. So when they can see that bridge to the convergence of, and just like I said, with insurance, with tax, and other, and retirement, it's just like the natural next step.
Yeah, I agree with you so much about what you said. It's not about them not wanting to do it because they just don't care to take the time. They do I agree, they care about their clients, which is why they wanna take the care to do it. And so they wanna make sure that they do it right. They wanna make sure they're delivering value. They wanna make sure they're not screwing it up. And it is hard because look, these are 2 specialties. It's not that retirement is harder than wealth management or that they can't learn it. It's just that there's so much to know about each. And can you effectively be the person to deliver both?
Yeah, I think, the one thing that our industry on the wealth management side really struggles with is organic growth and understanding how to get that nudged up from 2 to 3%. I mean, it's just really stagnant right now on organic growth. And this is one way that honestly, it is literally right under your nose. It's already a client of yours to just open that conversation and have that next stage of growth, and also possibly, lead generation for many decades to come out of those participants who then get to a stage of where they really need your advice. So it is, I mean, Lisa, I could not agree with you more. It's just a really natural way to build a business.
Completely, because for the wealth management advisor, it's a natural extension of what they're already talking about. They're already talking to their clients about tax strategies, about retirement, maybe specifically to them. But that client may be a small business owner. They may be an executive who is a decision maker on a 401k plan at their company. And so there is that opportunity to really just have a natural progression of the conversation. But I think for the reasons we just articulate, it's not on paper, it sounds great. It's just hard to do in practice. And one thing I am curious about from your perspective, where can we bring in technology maybe to help with that? And I know that's a very broad question, but how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, tech is absolutely everywhere. And in my opinion, giving a lot of lift to businesses from a value perspective and time perspective than ever before. So leaning into how technology can help you here is huge. I'll start with the participant level, like whether that's a state savings participant, because Vestwell does a lot of that, and also participant in workplace savings, whether it's 401k, 403b, whatever it is, that participant needs to be educated, and they need to understand the benefits of why do I need to save? Why do I need to take money out of what my current paycheck when things are already kind of tough, to why. And so utilizing technology that allows them to do little quizzes or risk tolerance, or when do you want to retire, if you put an extra $20 extra a day in, what does that look like, all those what if scenarios. And we're finally at a stage in our I would say just in our world right now that allows for that type of education to really be helpful. Like, people do see it as, I don't need to talk to someone. If I did this quiz and it says I need this target date fund, or I need that, to get, and if I'm saving a certain amount to get to that next stage, it allows for that education to happen from a tech perspective. And it doesn't all have to go back to the advisor or a phone call, God forbid, because that would be really troublesome if everyone had to have a phone call with that advisor.
It's super interesting you say that, and this conversation went there, because DECIA, which is a very large DC Retirement Plan Association is actually in Minneapolis this week, and I've spent some time with them. And one of the things they were talking about was the hundreds of thousands of plans that they expect to come from the state mandates, and who's going to handle them, and how can advisors do that? And looking to companies like Vestwell, is there sort of a, how do they just staff for that? And is there kind of a, I don't know if it's plug and play, but how does Vestwell think about that, think about the volume and how to onboard or make it easy and available for the advisors to know they can do it and then handle it?
Yeah, I mean, the onboarding is, you're absolutely right, Will. That's like the number one, part of this that has to happen. What you need the participant to lean in and want to do it, and then the onboarding is through payroll, and then to the record keeper. So you've got, but the plug and play nature of this has come miles ahead of where it was. The modern nature of the way, and to be honest, Aaron Schum, who CEO of Vestwell, saw this problem 10 years ago, to his credit. That's why he built Vestwell. He's like, this is way too hard for the average American to like save for retirement. There is a massive need to be able to streamline this in a way that really is easy to do. And so that is exactly what they've built. And they've built that end-to-end solution. So it's, the participant gets, can say, yes, I want to put this percentage in from my paycheck, to now it just automatically plugs into the HR system, which plugs into the payroll, which plugs into the record keeping, all of those things. And then that plugs into asset management. Like if, Franklin Templeton's an asset manager on that platform, they can pick one of those models to automatically rebalance and be, really literally plug and play from end to end. The performance reporting goes automatically back to that end participant on their phone if they want to just be able to look at and also do what if scenarios. If I add more, if I take out more. The other really cool part about Vestwell and I'm sure other companies, of course, are doing this as well, but emergency savings plans, why that was that important. Looking at, they have a part of their business called Gratify, and it allows.
It's on the map. Yeah, we love them.
Yeah, right, exactly. It allows for employees who are paying down their student debt for the company to match that at the same rate they would of their 401k. So into a 401k. So it's saving for within their 401k as they pay down their student debt. So it's kind of those built-in incentives. And again, this massive bipartisan support to do this. And it's getting even bigger, with the Trump's baby savings plans or whatever, the $100 or the $1,000 per baby that will be given, that is also something, Vestwell's vying for as well, to be that portal, so that as that $1,000 grows over time, it starts to build a retirement solution for those babies being born, and hopefully will give some interest, create some acknowledgement of saving and why, and watching it grow over these years. I think that could be a really good outcome of what they've put in place there.
Well, and I think too that we're talking about improving coverage. I mean, that's essentially why Aaron founded it. Well, and to make it easier and simpler, which reduces the friction, which allows for more to come into the system. And we have so many on our map that are doing things like that. Penelope is another focused solely on the micro market, and Salas and 401 Go, and some of these companies are really coming in and with a specific mandate of wanting to improve coverage. So I think from a technology perspective, we're trying to do some of the right things there and leveraging the legislation, which gave us the ability through Secure to really do this well. But where I think it also, and I'm kind of taking us back a little bit, how do you have any advice for those of us on the retirement side about what more we could do to work more closely with wealth management. Because, I really believe that at the end, it's going to be the two worlds coming together in a way if we want to improve coverage. Because, the wealth management advisors are the ones that sit shoulder to shoulder with these small business owners. By definition, retirement plan advisors don't do startup plans. They do retirement plans, right? So like they they there's a hesitancy on their part to do a plan a startup plan. And yet the wealth management advisors, as I said, they're the ones that have the small business clients. So it seems as though, at least theoretically, that's where a lot of the magic could happen if we could bring those worlds together. You've outlined some of the tech that's happened, but how do we bring the advisors together? Or do we?
One of the opportunities I do see, and this is not a direct answer for you, but it is adjacent to that, is, if you look at most RIAs or wealth management practices out there, they are in and of themselves a small business. They have employees, and a lot of them do not have 401k plans set up for their own employees. And so one of the things Vestwell had put in place is a highly, highly discounted program for advisors to just give it a shot. Do it on your own employees. Just try this. For your own employees, we will discount it almost to zero so that you get that first feeling of what it's like to do. And it's something great that you're able to do for your employees, even if you don't do matching. I mean, just to have a spot where it's easy to, save some money. So I think that's one of those bridging effects that could start to get enough advisors aware of how to really engage.
I just want to build on this a little more, and maybe it ties to the map, which is it's really two specialties and it's two kinds of conversations. And a lot of the tech companies on the map could be sort of that connection point because they're making it easier and they're helping one go from one specialty to the other because they can make it easy, they can make it efficient, and it makes business sense for them.
Sure. I think absolutely. I mean, hopefully this podcast actually opens up your eyes on, what, there's tools available. This is a great way to grow my business. It's going to take just little by little. And I do agree that some of these middle where retired tech options can really, help drive that. But it's tough overall. And, the other thing we haven't really touched on is that so much of wealth management is now owned by private equity companies, and that's driving behaviors as well. So, retirement accounts typically drive down the overall value of a wealth management firm because they're smaller accounts. And as they grow, it kind of sometimes makes an imbalance for like your high net worth accounts are fewer than your low balance accounts. And so, that methodology for how private equity values a client, an enterprise or a firm in any case, really can encroach on the way people think about whether or not they want to get into doing these retirement accounts and workplace savings accounts. And that's a disadvantage. Now, at the end of the day, you look at like a firm like Vestwell, who all they do is retirement accounts and helping workplace savings and, very small, low balance, typically types of accounts that are coming in. But because it's run by technology, it creates such a margin expansion. And so that is where I think if advisors or firms are thinking about opening this up to their advisors, the really important thing to do is to make sure you have tech either built in-house or, in my opinion, you should really outsource it for a lot of reasons. But outsourcing that would be, again, a really inexpensive way to plug and play and will not create the the valuation drag that it could otherwise if you were trying to do it all in-house, and it's cumbersome to deal with.
That's a super good advantage or observation. I want to make a little bit of a pivot, because part of how we started our conversation weeks ago and decided to do a podcast is you had seen our Retire Tech map at one of the innovation conferences I was at with you. And you made some really good observations that I'd like to dig into, because in essence, you were like, there's a lot of ways you could take this. There's other areas you could add. I'd like to have you talk a little to Lisa and I about, and the audience, about how you might expand it. What did this map make you think of, and how could it frankly bring more value to, the enterprises, the founders, and ultimately the small businesses and participants?
Sure. Well, I think that these maps are widely used for when there's a need in your business, whether it's a large or small business, honestly, to say, we need this. So this map says these are the 10 players in this area that could fill this gap for us. And let's call all of them and start RFPs or looking at their demos, figure out what their pricing is, how they might be able to, integrate with our large Orion or whoever you're using as a platform. And you start kind of there, and you're like, okay, where do we begin our process of exploration into this world? And so but immediately as I was looking at it, I'm like, okay, well, most firms who are looking for a 401k option, frequently it's driven through the HR side. And so HR is also looking for emergency savings plans. They're looking for HSA plans. They're looking for, that, like we talked about, the gratify option of student loan pay downs and insurance and things like that. So when I look at these, it's like, okay, who's the audience for it? How can this be most valued when it comes to who is, looking at it to fill whatever gap they're looking to fill? And then beyond that, and this would be really kind of more difficult, I think, but I'll just throw it out there, is to have, what would be cool, I think, is in the map, is to be able to click on it. It gives you a description of who the company is, where they're located, what they do, and who they're integrated with. Because the integration side is such a big question mark for most firms. They really want to know where and how these firms are integrated. What payroll companies, what HR companies, what financial planning companies. So if there's an opportunity to do something like that, to dig a little deeper, I think that would be, really cool.
So on that, one of the things, so Will and I, like you, Will and I have both, we have I think a unique perspective in our industry, in that we've both been senior execs at the big brands. We've both also been at startup from the get-go, from 0 to 1. I've been at the startup where you've had to answer due diligence questionnaires from a large company. And of course, I've also been on the other side too, vetting out the tech. And here's a challenge we see. And obviously, you've been not just on both sides, you've been on all sides. And what is your advice, or what would you say? Because what we see is that the large companies look at, not always, but often look at these early stage ventures through the lens as if they were looking at another large company. They often expect them to already have the bells and the whistles and all of the coverages and of insurance and cybersecurity. And I get all those things are important. But what they do often with those due diligence questionnaires is bury that early stage company who doesn't have the resources to run their company and also respond to this. But I certainly understand why the large company is asking for these things. So have you seen, or is there a way for us to sort of reduce that and sort of meet in the middle, where the big brands can get what they need, startups not put under, and as a part of that too, and sorry, I'm making this a very long question, but as a part of that, do you see it as a challenge that sometimes the big branch just can't look at startups in the right way? They don't always know how to really assess them properly, it seems.
For sure. I mean, having done a startup after having been at InvestNet from the beginning to for 16 years and then going to Pershing and then saying, you know what, I want to do my own thing. It is near impossible. You have to, and it was even really hard, not to say like, but it was really hard for me even. And I had a lot of friends in high places in the industry to say, hey, can you integrate with my new baby company? And here's why I think it should be great. And in it, we were able to get a fair number of integrations, but it still was very, very difficult. And for the reasons you say, as far as going with that larger, getting the business of the larger company is mired in compliance issues, cybersecurity issues, PII, and who they wanted to have a say in, like whoever we hired. I mean, it's crazy. So that is really a problem. It is a problem. What I have seen work to some extent is some firms get linked up with like an Orion or an InvestNet. And then because you're getting like, for example, recently, Gifting Network, for example, was brought in, which is a DAF opportunity through, we brought that in through Orion. I think InvestNet offers them as well. But that is now allowable to all the advisors at Orion who want to offer DAF accounts to their clients. So when it's up under there, all the performance reporting and everything else is coming back through Orion. And the PII and that type of stuff. So, and the account opening. And so you can, it depends what you're talking about when it comes to whatever kind of technology. But in some cases, if you can get a offering, and then frequently I'll tell you it requires rev share or some kind of sponsorship, some kind of maybe equity. There's lots of ways to get in, but there tends to be a much better adoption rate if you have that connectivity with a larger firm.
Because you're kind of riding the rails, basically, is what you said.
Exactly. Yeah, you totally are.
So maybe you're talking about where to start, which is Orion's not small, but getting connected to the platform that's the connector. I think that's kind of what I'm taking.
That's exactly right. Whether even it could be Pershing or Schwab or, it needs to be one of the hubs that advisors tend to go to or Vestwell. It needs to be a hub where they've already gone through all those hoops for cybersecurity and all the scale and how large they are. And, it's really to provide, comfort and assurances to that company that if they go with you, that you're not going to like run away with their money. There needs to be checks and balances in there. And I think it's hard as a startup. I absolutely understand. And I do think it's even more important for startups than ever before to have really good advisors who are well networked through the industry, who have kind of instant credibility, if you will, who can advise them on, not only what they can do internally to do that, but also talk with the decision makers at those firms to really kind of build up, where the opportunities are. And a lot of it is just to get to the table to have the conversation, because a lot of these firms are willing to build in whatever assurances they need, any cybersecurity or insurance they need, but they need to be at the table to understand what the requests are before, they have to be asked.
That advice about advisors and the right strategic advisors, great piece of advice. That is such a good place to start. But here's one of the challenges though. And, Will and I were at a conference earlier this year speaking and had the opportunity to meet the cybersecurity executive at a very large record keeper. And I talked to him about this because you're right. You have the right advisors who can get you into the right places and the doors, and the business folks at that big brand agree and go, yeah, this is great. We need this. It solves a problem for us. And, everyone's in agreement, and then you can hit a wall because cybersecurity. I mean, these startups they're not all startups, but they're early stage. They don't always get there yet from a cybersecurity perspective completely. It's a very expensive and long endeavor. So how do they do it, or how have you seen that work? Or I mean, maybe it's back to
Yeah, a lot of firms like Northwestern Mutual, I think Mass Mutual, Fidelity, they have these incubator areas. Like, I mean, Will and I were just at the Fidelity Labs conference recently, and yeah, so they are investing in kind of these early stage companies and saying, you know what, you're right, there is a lot of applicability here. We don't quite know what we think of you yet, so we're going to bring you into our world. So Mass Mutual did this, for example, with Flourish, which is a cash management solution. There's lots of Flourishes out there, but this Flourish happens to be the cash management solution. Great company, we love them. But they have grown up inside the four walls of Mass Mutual, so they were able to give them the coverage they needed to really, kind of graduate into that next stage, and where they felt comfort. Same thing with Fidelity. They have Catchlight, they've got Calico, they've got a bunch of different offerings that have now allowed them to grow up inside the four walls, and of Fidelity, where they feel more comfort there. And I'm sure I know that there's opportunities for those firms to spin out and do their own thing, but it's really cool if you can get in those incubator worlds and test out your product. You use their legal team, their tech teams, they're able to really help you grow.
Keep pushing on this a little bit. From a Cerity Partners point of view, what are the key points that you look for in founders of these new ventures, and sort of bring that to light so they understand your world and they understand kind of the hurdles that you look for?
Yeah, so within Cerity Partners, I've got to say the venture partner side, I don't have oversight. I mean, I'm up a level from there. So we are not looking at what firms we're going to be investing in. But I can tell you this from just generally knowing that you really want, in any kind of investment that you're making, that entrepreneurship, the integrity, the overview, a real concept that we really believe is going to be able to take root and be able to grow. So you want, in any kind of investment, whether it's private equity or venture capital, you want to have some level of kind of like confidence in their dependability to grow. Like, that's what we're looking for. And that's what drives valuations, is stability of ARR, stability of profitability. I mean, later stage, once they get there. So you're looking for, what the total addressable market is, and this is a really big one, what type of talent they have, what type of execution like background they have, because they can have a lot of talent, but if they're right out of school and they haven't had a chance to execute, it's really hard to bet on that horse. You haven't seen them race yet. So those are the things that, as investors, an investor lens, we're really looking for.
Yes, you're so right about the execution. Everyone can have a great idea, or anyone, I should say. But you're right, there has to be a total addressable market that's enough for an investor that says, yeah, this is something that we're willing to do. But you have to know the problem you're solving, a real problem.
Right.
Yeah, and that your solution is something that they're willing to pay for. And that's not and in our world, I'm not sure, and I keep saying our world, on the retirement plan side, I'm not sure that's something that we've done very well. And I say this ad nauseum, but we don't go speak to the employers and the employees that we service. and really find out what the job to be done is, and then go build solutions for that. We build solutions and then go put it at them and go, well, why do we only get 2 or 3% take up rate? It's because, did you ask if that was really a problem to solve?
Yeah, I mean, saying that a different way, Lisa, figuring out where clients find value in what you're providing. What will they pay for? Where do they actually find value in this service solution, offering? That is a really critical point to know. And I can tell you at GenStar, before we invest in any company, that's our number one question. And we don't just take their word for it. We're out surveying with lots and lots of client and non-client surveys to say, would this be of interest to you? How much would you pay? Why is it valuable to you? Why would you stay, or why would you leave? What are reasons why you would leave? And so that is a really critical point, what you said there.
That's important questions, but tying it back to the execution, like, you can find even if you go and find the problem to solve and you start building a solution, you have to execute. Because I said anyone can have an idea, but knowing that founding team and seeing that they can actually execute and get to it, and that they're willing to take the feedback, consistently iterate and build in a way that based on that feedback. Like, you don't want them so zoned in thinking they know and just blazing through. They've got to be willing to modify and iterate and all that. So anyway, something I can talk about a lot. I'll stop.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And what we find frequently with very small new companies is that they typically are founder led, who is someone who's as a creator. They are a product person, not a salesperson. So finding that person who can collaborate with you as a growth partner, and sometimes that's your advisors or your board, but that is really equally as important as the product, especially in those early stages. So
I think I want to ask one last line of questioning as we bring this to a close. What's fun about you, Lori, is, as we said at the outset, you've kind of sat in every seat. So if we go back to like your, I don't know, InvestNet days or Pershing days, how did you, and we've just talked a whole bunch about founders and new ventures, what it takes. How did you evaluate, especially in this world of so many technology solutions and people, knocking on your door daily? How did you decide whether to build, buy, or partner?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really think that it's a ever changing landscape. So at the InvestNet days, we were very insular. We wanted to build everything. And part of that was not having dependencies on other companies that could, kind of hang us out to dry or hold us hostage. We're going to change our pricing by 3,000%. And because we do all this for you, you got to pay it. So Judd Bergman, who was brilliant, really at that stage of the game was very interested in, let's build it. And we would outsource it until the point where we could close the gap and have it in sourced. But the problem with that is that I've learned over time is that keeping all those pieces, at a stage where they can compete from a modernization perspective is very difficult when it's all in-house. It really is nearly impossible. So what has now, and also since then, the world of APIs has been opened up to us. So, those did not exist really in the early 2000s, which is when we were creating InvestNet. So that was, since APIs have come about, it has totally changed the game, where outsourcing is now much more acceptable. And in a lot of cases, it's desired more than insourcing, for all the reasons we talked about. Headcount is very expensive, and headcount continues to rise as well. They can also hold you hostage. I've been here 10 years now. I want, a 200% raise. So that also can really create a lot of legacy, tech debt that you have to deal with when you're building it in-house. So the world has changed. And what I see now is many, many more firms, including InvestNet. Like they use DocuPace, for example, for back office workflow, new account opening, all these, and so Orion does too. Like they're all starting to see the light of how you can outsource very effectively, very, affordably, have the most modern solutions, because those niche partners are focused just on that and making sure that they're creating value for your firm and pivoting as needed to create new functionality and features. So, I like the fact that it has really changed. And if I had advice for anybody out there, it really would be take a minute and just stop investing in your existing legacy tech debt. Hire someone like Will and Lisa to take a new look at that. This was not paid advertising, but you really should bring in a consultant with new eyes to really show you what else you can do. And I bet you anything, you can do it with much less expensively, and be able to take the people that are doing more mundane tasks, trying to do that, and put them in places that are really going to create more value for your advisors and clients. So that is the truth. It's my number one piece of advice as a board member as well.
That's awesome. Thanks for the nice words. We look at it as speed, and also there's a bit of just translation. If you have somebody helping you between trying to get to an enterprise or build that solution, we can see things that others might see and just help the conversation move faster and kind of not speak two languages, even though oftentimes they think they're speaking the same.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I think consultants bring a new lens to is you are also out there looking at all the other problems that other firms have encountered. And so you can help, provide this, wait, I've seen this movie before. Here's where you're going to get stuck, because this firm doesn't talk to that firm. And we saw that happen, 3 projects ago. And that is really helpful and could cause, really save not just time, but a lot of money for some of these firms that are looking at, enabling their tech stack in a different way.
Well, that's probably the perfect place to draw this to a close. Yeah, thank you so much, Lori. This has been fantastic. And really, I hope that, we hope we have folks all over the industry that are listening, but particularly those on the retirement plan side. They learned a lot today about how the wealth management views this business. And, hopefully we can all figure out ways to work together.
Absolutely. I would love nothing more. If we just get one additional firm out there, trying to bridge, I would feel like this was a huge success. So if any of you are out there and you're giving it a shot, we'd love to know. It'll make us have a great day.
We would love to know. So thank you so much for your time, Lori.
Yeah, really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. Please subscribe, share, like, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Decoding growth isn't just talk, it's insight, action, and shared wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, share your insights and join the conversation. Subscribe, rate, review, and spread the word. Thanks for listening. See you next time.